Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. So this video is going to be about what's the word I'm looking for? Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. About the narcissist's own internal conflict. Now, for the last, I would say, couple years now, watching other people's videos, some are directly about narcissist abuse, some are not, some are just spiritual, and then there's the tarot card readers, etc. But there's something that I've continued to hear over and over, and I'm just like, what? That doesn't make, like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And not only does it not make any sense, but it was like I was saying, well, that's not true. So I'm making this video. I'm going to share some personal stories in hopes that it helps at least some of you to see something from a different perspective. And hopefully that helps you to alleviate some pain. So you guys know how I always talk about how narcissists are very divided, and it's all about division. See, it's not only that they try to divide and conquer people, they themselves inside have essentially been divided and conquered. Narcissists are so separate, so divided, that they can't see when they do the other opposite side of what they said is the reason why they hate you or hate someone else, and you're like, wait a minute, but you do the exact same thing. In fact, you are the one. They can't see it. It's like when they're on one side of the fence, they can't see what's on the other side of the fence, and then when they jump to the other side of the fence, they can't see what they just said on the other side of the fence. That's how separate and divided they are from themselves. So number one, it may seem as if you're dealing with someone who is schizophrenic. Schizophrenia is essentially when you have two separate parts that are completely separate where there's no connection. Whereas the average person, we have different parts going on, different small personas. But there's a connection to the core of who you are. So you can see it when someone points it out. Whereas a narcissist, they can't. And it's also very similar to, well, how do I say this, they may seem to have a complete and total split personality. So schizophrenia essentially, I want to give a real shortened version of it. It's essentially when there's a part of them that has its own personality that's completely separate and split off from all the other parts and the core of who they are. Like it's its own entity being. And then at times it gets triggered and comes up into their forehead, into their ego, and that person or being becomes that. And it seems like, well, who's this? Who's this person? Like, who am I dealing with now? And on top of that, they'll say one thing, and then it could literally be 5 minutes later where they say something completely total opposite in reverse. And you're looking at them like, what the? It's kind of creepy. So in NLP, we do something called parts integration. Well, we can integrate parts that are still neurologically connected to the whole or to the core or to other parts, okay? So we can integrate those and heal those. It's the parts that are completely separate entities that have no connections. That's when you're dealing with a totally different beast. All right, so how am I going to start this? All right, I'm just going to start in the middle somewhere, so I may bounce around a little bit. Okay, so there was this girl that we went to school with, and one of our friends eventually dated her. I think they're in 10th grade or something like that. I don't remember exactly when they were dating. And he started to become very miserable, and I mean really miserable. And one day I think they finally broke up because he was really pissed off all the time. And I don't remember if it was a year later, 9 months or whatever, but whatever, they ended up breaking up, and she's like, would say the B word, she's a bitch. And I remember thinking, like, God, what a jerk, because she always seems smiley to me and happy But now, as I look back, she also had this very moody, poor me, sad me, it was the whole like feel sorry for me tactic. So the next 8-12 months went by, and at this point we're like at the end of 11th grade, and someone else is talking like, oh man, she's a real B word. I'm like, what are you talking about? She seems like the nicest girl in the world. But then again, I'd never really spent any time with her. I don't even think I ever had one conversation, kind of like hi and bye, walking by. And that was it. So I didn't really know her, and that's kind of your typical thing. Like you hear one or two people say something bad about this one person where everyone else seems to like them. So you think, that guy's just a jerk, or they're just it's a typical narcissist thing. So I ended up dating her after high school, about a year and I think a half, something like that. And pretty girl, and she, it was kind of like out of nowhere. It was like, I don't even remember how. I don't know if she just called me on the phone one day. I don't remember how we got together. So we start dating and stuff, and very quickly, and I mean quickly, like 2 or 3 weeks later, she's like, hey, I want you to go to my sister's what's it called when you get pregnant and then they put that sonogram? I think it's called a sonogram. They put the sonogram thing on their belly to see, how well the baby's developed, and you can also figure out the sex of it, etc. So I kind of felt uncomfortable and I said, I've never even met your sister. Isn't this kind of personal, kind of intimate? And oh my, come on, blah blah blah. It's beautiful. It's the beauty of life and the beauty of birth. And I'm like, oh okay. And so I went along, and I felt uncomfortable. And she's like, isn't this amazing? I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. And then when we left, she was talking about how I think someone else's sister had a sonogram and how she went to that, or how she's looking forward to so-and-so's, they're pregnant too. And she was all about this, okay? And she really loved it and loved going to sonograms and the whole birth thing. And it was, great. All right. And then, I don't know if it was 3 weeks later or a month later, but it could have even been 2 weeks later, but it was very shortly after. My sister said, hey, I'm going to go do the sonogram. I want you to come. Bring your girlfriend. I was like, oh, okay. So I asked her to go along. She was kind of grumpy about it. And I thought, oh, she's probably just having a bad day, because she absolutely loves this stuff. That's what she's all about, right? Because she couldn't stop talking about it. And it wasn't just her sister. It was someone else. And I think another person. But that's all she talked about for days. So I'm thinking, oh, she's going to love this. So I took her, and she was kind of quiet, and we were there, and I go, isn't this great? And don't you love it? And she's just kind of starts to whine, and I don't want to be here. And my sister's kind of looking like, what the fuck's going on? And I'm like, fuck, I don't know. I thought she liked this kind of stuff. And when we ended up leaving early, and she was really pissed and starts yelling at me going down the hall, yelling at me in the car, like, why would you take me to that? I don't even know your sister. And I'm kind of like listening to her going, sounds real familiar. And she was all like, it's so personal. It's such an intimate thing, blah, blah, blah. Why would you invite me? And the more she talked, I'm like, well, isn't this exactly everything that I said? And I actually said that out loud. Like, well, you took me to your sister's. I never met your sister before. Now, the fact that this upset her that bad was it really caught me off guard. I was like, this is not making any sense, because that's all she talked about a few weeks before this, how she loves it, how it's a great experience. And all of a sudden, she's just miserable, and she is not happy at all. So I called her on it and said, well, wait a minute, this is exactly what I said to you. This is exactly blah, 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 but you invited me. And it to her was like, well, that's different. I'm like, how is that different? Like, it's exactly the same. And the funny thing was, it wasn't really like she was smirking or like, just trying to act like, oh shit, I didn't realize that. She literally couldn't see it. Like, she could not recognize it at all. So this is a huge red flag when someone does this. In fact, I recommend if someone does something like this to you, I don't care what it's about, and it's the same situation and they don't understand why you didn't like it, and yet then they didn't like, that is a huge red flag of get the hell out, run, walk and block them on everything. Now, this was probably one of the shortest relationships I've ever had. I think it only lasted about 3 months, maybe a little bit more. So she ended up one night inviting me over for dinner, and it was another thing. I was just like, she was just, I don't know, like, what happened? Like, what's going on now? Like, what's the problem? So I realized that night. In fact, I even said something to her like, you don't even like me around, do you? So, oh, no, I do. I'm like, no, you don't. And so that was kind of the first time in my life where I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. And I ended up leaving. So then very shortly after, she knew I was upset, and I pretty much didn't call her, and she called me up, invited me over to meet her dad. Now here's the weird thing. I knew her dad, but I did not realize that person was her dad. So let's rewind about 3.5 years, maybe 4 years. I think it was 10th grade. Yeah, it was the spring of 10th grade high school. Spring ball. So the year before, I played summer ball, and that year I got drafted by the California Angels. Yes, the professional Major League Baseball team. So I was really good at baseball. Baseball was one of those things that I didn't have to work at. I was just freaking good at it. I just showed up for practice. I never took practice seriously. Like every other sport I've done, like boxing, when I came home, I had to practice shadow boxing, practice my techniques, do my push-ups and sit-ups, and I would be doing this for hours in the morning, hours after practice. Every other sport I did, I focused on it and I worked on it. Baseball, I just showed up. I never jogged in the morning. I never did my push-ups and sit-ups. I just showed up and practiced and goofed around. I was a goofball, and it was just a really fun thing for me. But damn, I was good. So in 8th grade, what happened was towards the second half of the season, in fact, I'm sure it was the second half of the season, my coach comes up to me. There's a game up in Yountville. There's a cute stadium up there. I can't remember the name right now, but it's like the Veterans Home Stadium. It's at the Veterans Home, and it has kind of a high wall. So when you're a kid, when you're in 8th grade, 7th grade, that wall seems monstrous at the time, okay? So to me, it was like a mini Major League Baseball park because the dugouts and where the fans sat, and there was this overhang thing to protect them for the sun, etc., give them shade, and the hot dog stands, and it had a booth where two guys up there talking on the microphones, the loudspeakers. It was just a really, really cool setup. It's still there, by the way. Now you can't quite see it, but on the left side there's a hill that goes up, and there's at least back then, I don't know about now, but there was vines. There was vineyards back there. So this is Napa Valley. This literally is right in the middle of the vineyards and the wineries and all that stuff. So it was a really beautiful setting. And whenever I played at this field, I really, really did well because for something about it, it got me fired up. So one day my coach comes up to me right before, I can't remember if it was before I batted or no, it was when because I was a catcher. So when I took home plate. So he called me over and said, hey, and now we just did our warm-ups and finished up, and their team was coming up to bat, and I was going back out. He goes, hey, Mike, come here. I'm like, well, what's going on? He goes, I just want to let you know there's a couple scouts here scouting you. I go, what are you talking about? I'm just a kid. This was the summer or fall just going into 9th grade, or just maybe a week before, however long. It may actually have been the first week of fall. Of 9th grade. Regardless, it was the summer before 9th grade. And he said, no, I'm not joking. The California Angels have scouts here, and the New York Yankees have some scouts out here. I'm like, why? They're like, to watch you. And I just kind of looked at him like, oh, whatever. And I remember I looked up in the stands to the right, and I just kind of like, well, I saw people, but it's not like somebody was wearing a New York Yankees hat or nothing like that. So I honestly thought my coach was just trying to get me fired up for the game, and I kind of looked at him like, when have I not been fired up, to play a game? Like, I always kick ass. Well, it turns out they actually were up in the stands, and I didn't find this out for about, I don't know, a couple weeks later or a month later, and it was at practice. So I remember his first name, Ray, no, not Sizemore, that was our assistant coach. It was Ray, I cannot remember his last name. So he came up and said, hey, you just got drafted. And I looked at him like, what, shut up. I'm just a kid. He goes, no, I'm serious. And he goes, here, look, it was in the newspaper. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean I got drafted? Like, no one ever told me anything. It's, well, what they did is he goes, you didn't get drafted in the first round, but you got drafted, I think it was like in the 5th round or 6th round, something like that. I'm like, so what does that mean? He goes, well, it means they own your name. So if when you turn 18, you decide to go pro or anytime after, they can either choose to keep you or they can choose to trade you or sell you off or how, whatever the terms are. Now that game, I had busted my middle finger in 2 places, completely broke it through at the knuckle, etc. Now I did it the game before, which was a few days before. So it was purple, it was blue. I had it taped up to my other finger. And I was just a super, super tough kid. So I'm kind of backing up a few weeks when the scouts were watching me. So I went up and I threw out, I think it was 5 guys at second base. I was gunning people, and I remember what happened was I picked up on the coach's base calling, and I looked at him and I called timeout and I stood up and I took 2 or 3 steps over towards their coach and I said, really, and I'm yelling this out loud. I go, you're gonna do it again? I said it much louder than that though. Because he was down there by first base, so I ended up calling Kevin, say, Kevin, and I looked at my coach and he goes, send it. I go, Kevin, it's coming down. Now Kevin was a shortstop and he was the one who would always catch my throws down to second base. So I gave the pitcher the signal, throw it high and outside, throws it, catch it, boom, and I'm gunning it. Like I was in the zone during this game. And I remember I looked at the coach like, is that enough? Like, see, when someone, like, you can tell when a catcher's throwing, like when he's in the zone or when he's not. I was in the zone. Those throws were just everything. My mechanics, it was right on the corner. I remember I even said that. I yelled that out to Kevin. It's gonna be on the corner of the bag, and it was literally about 6 to 8 inches from the corner of the bag. It was exactly where it should be. So I ended up throwing out another guy that tried to steal from second to third. I threw that guy out, etc. And so I just looked at the coach like, what are you doing? You're killing your team. Now during this game, I hit an in-the-park home run, which is kind of rare. And I got 2 doubles, I got 2 triples, I hit a single, and I had, let me think. I know I'd stolen second base once. I think, I stole second base once, and then I stole home from third base. The point being was, I had one hell of a game. So now let's fast forward a couple years to 10th grade baseball. I go out, thinking, of course, I'm going to be the starting catcher. So we're all out there waiting, first day. The coach actually had to start an hour late because of his job, so generally we showed up an hour after school got out. And some guy showed up. Now, I had never seen this guy in my life. And so essentially he's about 100 yards away, more than that. It's probably about 250, and he starts yelling something out, and I'm like, what's he saying? And I'm like, I don't know, I can't understand what he's saying, but he's yelling, he's pissed. And he's saying something over and over as he's getting closer. Finally, the kid next to me goes, oh, I think he's calling your name. I'm like, really? Why? And then it gets closer and closer. The kid next to me goes, oh, he's telling you to leave. I'm like, what do you mean leave? Why? First day of practice, we all just showed up within the last 6 or 7 minutes. Nobody had done nothing wrong. And he gets closer and closer. He goes, are you Mike Kollin? I was like, yes, sir. He goes, hit the showers, and just screams it. And I kind of didn't know what to think, so I kind of giggled a little bit, thinking it was some kind of joke that I didn't get. And I go, I don't understand. What do you mean hit the showers? We hadn't even started practice. And he goes, hit the showers, and he's pissed. And I go, like, what do you mean hit the showers? You mean take a shower and then come back? He goes, no, get the fuck out of here. And he was pissed. Now, mind you, this was about 4 years before I dated his daughter, and I never really knew his daughter in high school. I mean, I knew who she was, but I never had a conversation. So I'm thinking, well, what the hell's going on here? So I thought, I'm probably misunderstanding something, but I'll leave. It's cool. And then I came back the next day, same thing. As he's walking up, he's telling me to get the F out of here, hit the showers. This happened the next day, and this went on for weeks. He would not let me practice, and I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? So eventually he got his point across. It's like, you're not welcome here, don't come back. I was like, yeah, I get it. But the reason was bizarre. So here we are, about a year and a half after high school. So that's about 4 years, I would say, after this experience. And I am dating his daughter, not knowing, because I only knew her as Heidi. Like, I almost never heard her last name. I might have heard it once or twice, but it kind of went over my head. Never made the connection with the baseball coach. They had the same last, and she goes, well, my dad. So she's all pissed off, and she's grumpy, and I'm like, I'm out of here. Fuck this. And so what ended up happening was I think she knew, like, I was pretty much not going to call her back, and she ended up calling me, oh, my dad wants to make dinner for us. I'm like, oh, really? Oh, okay. So I was curious. I thought, man, maybe she's really serious and wants to get more serious. So I said, yeah, I'd love to meet your dad. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I mean, I've known you all these years, and I've never met your dad, and we've been dating for a while. She goes, you know my dad. I'm like, no, I don't. And then she said his last name. She was Mr. So-and-so. And I was like, wait, you mean the baseball coach? She goes, yeah. I'm like, oh, God. Yeah, like the curious cat that I was like, oh, okay, I'll kind of see what the hell this is all about. And I'm thinking maybe he's making peace or something. I don't know. So he cooks dinner and he's serving it to us. Hey, Mike, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Acting like nothing ever happened in the past. Super nice to me. And we're sitting down eating. In the middle of eating, he goes, hey, did you ever figure out why I kicked you off the baseball team? And I was like, no. I go, it made no sense to me. I was respectful. I never talked back even when you were yelling at me. And you never gave me a reason of why you were sending me home. And he goes, I hated your father. I'm like, what are you talking about? I go, did he beat you up? He goes, no. I go, did he beat up some of your friends or something? He goes, no. Because my dad was a really nice guy, but maybe there was things I didn't know. And he goes, oh, no. I go, well, was he rude to your parents or something? Or was disrespectful someday? He goes, no. And he goes, I never actually met your dad. I'm like, why? He goes, well, your dad had graduated high school before I'd even got into 9th grade. I was like, oh, okay. So this is making no sense to me. And that's when I said, was he rude to your parents downtown one day randomly or something? He goes, oh, no, not at all. He goes, your dad was the nicest man in the world. Your dad was a really respectful person. He was a really good guy. I'm like, okay. He says, now here's the weird part. On the one hand, he hates him. Now watch this. Now we're going to flip. Now, as we're having these conversations, I remember some guys that were seniors that played baseball for him that absolutely hate him. And I remember it was kind of in the background because I never seen the guy, never met him, had no idea who this guy was. I kept hearing his last name. Oh, he's a jerk. He's this, and I heard it for years. Like always, this never heard us. Never. I had a really good friend actually play for him. Probably during Babe Ruth. I'm not sure if he was a Babe Ruth coach back when we were playing, but regardless, this guy had played, oh, he's a dick, that guy's an asshole. I'm like, okay, took it with a grain of salt, whatever. So he's telling me how my dad was this nice guy, never had a problem with him. My dad was, very respectful, never did anything wrong. And now I'm like, so what's the problem? He goes, your dad. Now here's the flip. He was the best athlete that ever came out of Napa High. Or, yeah, I think he said Napa. Yeah, out of Napa. I'm like, okay. He would have spun circles around so-and-so. So I had heard this since I was a kid. When we moved back to Napa, there was an 8th grade coach that pulled me and my brother inside and said, wait, is your dad Gary Kollin? We're like, yeah. So this was PE. This was, I think, the first week of the very first day of PE, and he brought us both in when he found out our last name, and he had some assistant run the class, and for an hour he just sat there and told us the things my dad did and how he was the best athlete that ever came out of Napa, blah, blah, blah. Like this guy, he could have gone to the pros in high school, blah, blah, blah. And so I've heard this from quite a few people over the years, and I had an idea of, like, I knew my dad was good. My dad was better than me. My dad was good. So this is what this coach is saying to me at dinner, saying, your dad was the best athlete. You have no idea. He was better than so-and-so. He would spin circles around so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. And now I'm kind of stunned thinking I was expecting him to tell me some horror story, how my dad picked on him, beat him up or bullied him or took his girlfriend or did something. Now here's the deal. He flipped from I hate your dad to your dad was amazing. Your dad was awesome. Your dad was the best athlete. And I'm just kind of looking at him going, what in the fuck? This guy is fucking crazy. Like, and I looked at him and I finally go, so, because I'm waiting for him to drop the bomb of here's what he did. And he never did. So after about 30 minutes or more of him just praising my father, this absolute pure admiration, I said, I don't understand. So what are you mad at my dad for? He goes, oh, he didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, now my brain's, I'm the one not making the connection at this point because I didn't know what narcissists are. And he goes, well, your dad didn't do anything wrong. He goes, Michael, you have no idea how great your dad was. And I'm just looking at this guy. And I looked at his daughter and back at the dad like, your dad's nuts. Because he went from hate to absolute admiration and love and how amazing he was. And even when I asked him, so what are you mad at him for? He just never gave a reason. Except for the fact was, the reason he was mad at my dad was because of how much he admired him. And he took it out on a kid. It was the most weird, like, what the hell? Like, and here's the thing. I never told my dad till my dad died. Because once it was over, kind of like, whatever, something happened, no big deal. Never even thought to tell my dad. And I hadn't seen my dad for probably 7 years at that point. Because my mom divorced and moved us away. And I didn't see him for another 3 or 4 years until I found him when I was about 19 or 20 years old. And it never crossed my mind to tell him. So if that was his way of getting back at my dad, he never knew about it. Now here's another one very similar. In 9th grade, again this is before 10th grade, before I met that guy, there was a teacher, history teacher. And it was first period. It was the first day at this new high school that, I'd never been to this high school. And it was my first day. I showed up early before the first bell rang, before the second bell rang. So I'm there about 7 minutes early. And the minute I walk in the door, this teacher goes, are you Mr. Mike Kollin? I was like, yes, sir. And I literally said yes, sir to him and to the coach that time. He goes, come up here. I got something for you. I'm like, oh, what's that? I'm thinking, how does this guy know who I am? He had a detention written out already. And he hands it to me. He goes, every day when you come in, come up to my desk first. There will be a written detention out before class. And he did. He wrote out a detention every single day the entire semester. And he tried to humiliate me in front of the kids. But there was a girl in class, Carolyn. Her parents were rich. I think they were lawyers. But she was a very outspoken, and she was tall for her age. Tall and kind of a, she wasn't feminine and petite. She was kind of a broad-shouldered girl, but pretty. And she yelled at I'm not going to say his name. She yelled at him. And she stood up for me. And I was like, wow, that's a first. Now, when I mean stand up, she ripped into him for about 5 minutes. And she shut him down. So anyways, it was after the dinner with the baseball coach. And he told me how he hated my dad. And my dad was so great. And how he admired him and all this shit. It was about a year after that. I was working at a deli up in Yountville, which is the same city that Baseball Diamond is in. And the 9th grade first period, I think it was history or social, I think it's called social studies. He comes in, he goes, Mr. Kollin. Now, I was in the deli, it was on the side of the building, so you could enter the grocery store from there, but it was kind of its own little entity. And it was just me there and him. And he goes, did you ever figure out why I gave you all those detentions? And I said, no, Mr. Swan. I mean, I was always polite. I was always respectful. I never got mad. I never spoke back. He goes, you were a very respectful young man. So cutting to the chase, I'm basically like, so what was it all about? Same thing. I hated your dad. And I said, oh, did my dad bully you or beat you up in high school? Oh, no, your dad graduated before I even got to high school. He goes, I never actually met your dad. I'm like, well, like, did he run into you downtown and he knocked you down or something weird? No, he goes, I told you, I never met your dad. I've never seen your dad in person. I'm like, what? And I did the same thing. Was he rude to your parents? Did he do something to your siblings or a friend? He goes, no, your dad was a really good man, Michael. And I'm just looking at him like, once again, this doesn't make no sense. Now, these are full-grown adults. And he said the same thing. Your dad was the greatest athlete that ever came out of Napa. And he just went on. Sorry, I accidentally cut off. He went on and on and on about how great my dad was. And here's the deal. He started to smile. He goes, your dad, he did this one time. He did this. And he's just like happy. And it was the same thing with the coach. The coach, when he was telling these stories about my dad, he wasn't mad. He was really thrilled, like he was watching his favorite baseball player. And they were going on and on. And I'm looking at this guy just like I did the coach, like, this is making no sense. Complete split. Now, I've got another one for you. So what I'm talking about is a lot of tarot card readers or just people that talk about narcissist abuse will tell you, like, how do they say it? They say like they hated you, but they admire you. When you walk away, there was something about you that they absolutely loved and they admired you and they this and they that. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? They admired you so much. They wanted to be like you. They wanted to do what you wanted to do. And now I've listened to this for 2+ years from different people on YouTube. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, no, they didn't. They hated me. And they did. And they were unbelievably mean, okay? So that part is very, very true. So here I am studying psychology in college, and I had started going through the NLP courses, the Practictioner, the Master Practitioner. I'm reading all these books on hypnosis and how the unconscious mind works and personality this and split personality and parts, how these are mini personalities, but they're not separated, blah, blah, blah. And I'm learning all this stuff, okay? So I'm at home visiting my mom and my sister, and I don't know who else was in the room. We're sitting down at the kitchen table, and my mom, I think I asked it because of NLP, because Tony Robbins' seminar taught us something called the deep love strategy, and I think that's what I was leading into, but she took it in a different direction. I do remember asking her, so what was it about Dad that you loved so much that you wanted to marry him? And without missing a beat, she goes, oh, your dad. Everybody loved your dad. Your dad was the greatest guy in school. He was the nicest person. Your dad was the best athlete. Your dad, he basically, everywhere he went, he made people happy. Everywhere he went, people wanted to be around him. And she was saying all this. And I'm kind of like, wow, I'd never heard my mom say a single good thing about my dad my entire life, other than he was great at sports. But things like people liked your dad was like the nicest guy, your dad was a great guy, your dad this, your dad. I mean, all this stuff was brand new, and I'm just smiling. I'm so happy. I'm like, wow, because I didn't know my dad. And I'd never heard anything good about him other than he was great at sports. So a few minutes go by. I don't know, it was 2 or 3 or 5, maybe 10, but a little bit of time had passed. And I don't know how we switched conversations. I may have been the one that asked this, and it might have been from an NLP thing, probably parts integration or something I was thinking about. And I remember asking, like, or someone did, or maybe we didn't. She just threw it. I don't remember how, but I think it was something to this effect, like, well, then why did you divorce Dad? I don't know, for whatever reason, she got on the path of why she divorced him. And what she said blew my mind. She had said the exact same thing of why she married him. Oh, your dad, he was always the center of attention. Everybody loved your dad. Your dad was amazing. And I'm looking at her going, what? Like, your dad was so nice to people, blah, 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 blah. He would give the shirt off his back. And I'm thinking, this is exactly what you said when I said, why did you marry him? And she even said about how he was a great athlete. He was the best athlete on every team was on, blah, 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 blah. But it was with anger this time. And I'm kind of looking at her like you literally said this, almost verbatim, word for word, 5 minutes ago about why you married him. And now you're saying it's the same reason on why you're divorcing him or why you divorced him and why you hate him so much? What the fuck? Now, I remember distinctly looking at my sister, and her eyes were wide open, like the facial expression was like, what the F? Like, what? And I looked at her, and she looked at me. Because we could tell that our mom wasn't making the connection. It was at this moment I looked at my mom, in a completely different light. I was looking at her like, there's something not right here. So here's what and I even brought it up. I'm like, Mom, you literally just said the same exact thing for why you married him. She goes, what do you mean? I go, Mom, you literally just said a few minutes ago the reason why you married him was for A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then you said that was the same reasons, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, on why you divorced him. And she kind of got quiet and she looked at me. She looked at my sister and she's like, no, I didn't. I'm like, yes, you did. And my sister goes, yeah, you did. And my mom, she flipped her lid. She blew up and and I'm like, Mom, you did. Now I'm just adamant. Like I was Mr. Truth guy and, not quite realizing it was going to upset her. And she just finally got up and stormed back to her room and slammed the door. In the narcissist reality, two realities cannot fit in the same room at the same time, at the same space. In other words, look the other way. What you heard, you did not hear. What you saw, you did not see. Number one, arguing with a narcissist is a waste of time. Their brains are just wackadoodle. They will flip-flop, 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 flip-flop to whatever comes to their advantage. And they have separate parts that I believe are split personalities. I mean, you're talking to two different beings inside the same body. Walk away, walk away, walk away. Just say, yep, you're right, and just walk away. Because this is a narcissist's own internal conflict. Everywhere they go, people get caught up in their internal conflict. Not the other people, the narcissist internal conflict, because they suck you into it. Because their brain can't make the connection of, like, wait a minute, you just said A, now you're saying the complete opposite Z, and that's the same reason why you loved them and hated them. Like, that something's not making sense there. And the thing about it is their brain can't make sense of it either. That's why they have to separate everything. And if you try to sit there and hold them to it, it's going to be crazy making. They will make you go in circles because they'll make stuff up. They'll change the story. Oh, that's not true. I never said that. I mean, it's like they will do anything and everything to save their own internal conflict, I guess. It's a really weird... Okay, all I'm saying is they are divided inside. And once you see someone that does this, walk away. Don't ever engage in conversation with them again, because every conversation you have with these people, after you get past the kindness, first couple of days, weeks, it's going to be nothing but a conflict, an argument, and a fight. Because that's what's going on inside their head. That's what they're doing to themselves. The same thing that everything that you went through with a narcissist, they're doing to themselves. They gaslight themselves. They have an argument inside with themselves every moment of every second of every day. I'm not kidding. Don't get caught up in it. They're in their own world, in their own internal conflict. They gaslight themselves. Literally, I'm not kidding. You're wasting your time getting caught up in their own argument. This is their own argument with themselves. And what happens is when you get in the middle, well, the left side starts to argue from the left side. Oh, the reason why I married your dad is because he's such a great guy. And then all of a sudden the other person comes out and argues the complete opposite. And now here you are in between these two separate parts going, whoa, what the fuck? Don't do it. Step out of the argument. This has nothing to do with you or anyone else. The very next person that they talk to, if you were a fly on the wall recording this audio and video, you would literally hear the exact same conversation, pro and negative, positive and negative, for and against, and that person would be getting caught up in the same argument you just had with the person, and then go to the next one and the next one, and then it never stops. It's not you, it's them. So for the same reason they were attracted to you, your light, your energy, your love, your goodness, your talent, your commitment, your hard work ethic, everything that you do, and is the reason why they want to be with you, love you, and want to marry you, start a business with you, etc., is the very exact same reason that they're going to destroy you. They're going to attack you. They're going to leave you. They're going to divorce you. They're going to hurt you. And you're like, wait a minute, that's why you got with me. Like, this doesn't, and you're right. It doesn't make any sense. I promise you, if you have dealt with a narcissist, there's something awesome about you. It could be your beautiful eyes, your beautiful smile. It could be your presence. It could be the fact that people just love being around you, that you make people happy and people love that. It could be you have unbelievable talents. You know, you're really good at something, or you're really hardworking, or whatever. You're dedicated, or you're focused. Here's the thing. That's why they are attracted to you. And what happens is they want what you have. And then in their mind, well, if I destroy them, then I get their powers. No, they don't. And you don't lose them either. That was an illusion too. So most of us have dealt with a multitude of narcissists over our entire lives since we're little children. They saw it. I mean, okay, my older brother called me. It was Christmas. Actually, it was just before Christmas, a couple days or weeks, something like that. And it was about a month, 4 or 5 weeks after my accident. And he just flat out told me, he goes, you know, Mom used to hate you when you were a little kid. I'm like, but why? She goes, oh, she was jealous of you. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, don't you remember when you were 8 months old and Mom started beating you with a leather belt? I'm like, yeah. And she'd always do it when I was quiet and asleep. It's like she was jealous of you. Mom could see that you were talented like Dad, that you were smart like Dad. I'm like, well, how could she see it when I was 8 months old? He goes, Michael, by the time you were 9 months old, you were walking, and I mean just cruising along. He goes, the way you moved, the way you looked, the face look. He goes, you were just like Dad. We knew you were going to be talented and smart, just like Dad. You guys have a light about you. There's a glow in your eyes. There's a glow about you. You just look, you know, as I look back on my brothers and sisters, they all had this, like, I don't know what the word is, like a dark negative energy. Like they weren't bright. They didn't glow. They didn't have that shine in their face, in their eyes, in their voice, in nothing about them. My point is, I didn't see it in myself. My mom even said it to me. My younger sister said this to me, like, Michael, you like have a light around you. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought it was airy fairy, spirituality bullshit. And like, yeah, I've got a light around me, whatever. Yeah, I'm like Jesus Christ. Or who was the one? Was it Moses that had the Shekinah glory that shined behind him? Essentially, that's what they were saying. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, I'm not going to go so far as they had like the Shekinah glory, but they're just saying there's something different about your light, about your energy. It's like you just look brighter. All I'm saying is this. You are talented. You are special. Look, if you didn't have that light, if you didn't have that love, if you didn't have something bright and talented about you, they never, ever, ever would have wasted an ounce of energy on hurting you. Number one, they're too lazy spending any energy on anybody except themselves and their target. They are just flat out too selfish to spend any time setting someone up, taking through the love bombing phase and spending all that energy and all that bullshit and all the techniques and tactics. If you weren't special, you never would have been brought through the cycle. Period. End of sentence. Trust me, you are special. Alright, God bless you guys. If you guys like this video, please click subscribe, click the like button, make a comment. And if you like, you can go ahead and make a donation. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.